Are you ready to roll and talk about music and have
I am ready to roll.
and all your? We're gonna talk about your shining moments. Yo, welcome to my Summer Lair. I am your hoops host, Sammy. Give me the ball as the clock is winding down. Younan. There are three utterly iconic basketball songs that discern the majestic poetry of this beautiful game. I'm not going to sing any of them, but the first one, Sometimes I Dream That He Is Me. You know how this goes. You've got to see that's how I dream to be. Like Mike, if I could be like Mike. That surprisingly infectious Gatorade commercial produced a nostalgic anthem. John Tesh's Brown Ball Rock, which hyped and scored the NBA on NBC, which ran for 12 glorious seasons, 1990 to 2002. Shout out to Marv Albert. I think he had his original hair back then. And finally, the March Madness closer, One Shining Moment, written by David Barrett, which has been used by the NCAA tournament since 1987, which was the same year they introduced the three-point shot. As the final game of March Madness 2021 draws near, Baylor Bears versus the undefeated Gonzaga Bulldogs, we have a rare moment of reflection before tip-off. It's been a strange tournament, though after canceling last year's games, I'm just grateful it's back in some form and really as close to normal. And normal includes tonight's stirring One Shining Moment montage recap. In this conversation, David shares this fantastic observation. These kids are in the moment uniquely, and when they see themselves in the One Shining Moment vignette, they'll have a painting of themselves at age 19, 20, in the full flower of their talent and youth. This is their moment, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Here now is my conversation with Michigan songwriter and composer David Barrett, revealing the origins of that special basketball song. Oh, but first, if you're not familiar with the song, I'll give you a quick sample courtesy of Charles Barkley. May God have mercy on your soul.
The ball is tipped, and there you are. You're running for your life. You're a shooting star. One shining moment is all on the line. One shining moment. That's good.
So I want to start in 2002. You scored The Life and Faith,
2000.
The Life and Faith of C.S. Lewis, The Magic That Never Ends,
Oh, yeah.
right? And you won an
Sure,
Emmy for that as well.
I did. Correct. Yep.
I'm starting a little bit at the back before we get to One Shining Moment, but I want to talk about this project with the Life and Faith of C.S. Lewis. How did that project come to you, and were you like a C.S. Lewis fan going into this project?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it's funny because of my song One Shining Moment, a gentleman, I used to live in northern Michigan, and his name's David Krause. And David, after he heard One Shining Moment, said, look, I've just started this production house, and we're doing all sorts of documentaries, and would you like to write for one? And I said, sure, David, I'd love to. He used to come see me perform when I was a performer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, years passed, and then he called me up and said, would you like to do one? So I did a score for him on, who was it? Oh, heaven.
Norman Vincent Peale?
But anyway, yes, Norman Vincent Peale. Forgive me. Yes, you're smarter than, well, you are smarter than I am. But, yes, I
have
did that,
moments.
and it turned out it turned out very well. And then when this show came up, he called me and we chatted about it. And I certainly was familiar with C.S. Lewis and admire him in every shape and form. And then so, as it turned out, it was a perfect fit. I do a number. In fact, when you called me, I was working out a guitar piece that I've been working on for quite some while, and it's called fingerstyle guitar. It's somewhere between classical and country blues, but it really lended itself to the show. And if you ever get a minute, check it out, the show, because they had, was the gentleman who did Gandhi? He was the
Ben Kingsley.
star. Ben Kingsley did the voiceover, and it was an honor to be a part of the whole operation. So it was a perfect fit. I had a chance to read more of Lewis, C.S. Lewis, and not only that, learn about what an amazing life he lived and what a legacy he left behind. So it was a perfect fit for me.
So the reason I brought up C.S. Lewis, and you just mentioned this now, you're just working on a piece. You were in the studio and you're working on a guitar piece.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
C.S. Lewis was a man of faith. That's one of the things he's primarily known for.
Yeah.
It is songwriting mirror faith. Yep. So as you're composing these songs or themes, like, do you hope and have faith that the next note will be there, will magically be up here, or like that you will have the right lyrics? That's what I'm gonna get at.
That's a great question. It truly is a great question, because I've been doing this quite some while, and I would say you get in what I call the flow. And what does the flow mean? It means that sometimes you're driving the car and sometimes the car is driving you. And so often I get working on a piece and it all makes sense except for one part, and I don't know what's wrong with the one part. So instead of just trying to fix it, I give it time and come back to it a little later, whether it be a day or two or a year or whatever. And then it seems it'll mend itself, and then it will make sense. So that sounds a little bit esoteric, but it happens to be the way I work, at least. So to answer your question, there is a certain faith that you will strike the right notes, because there's an endless amount of combinations of these notes, and you try to find the ones that speak to you, like someone who paints paintings. You're looking for the right tone of the color or the right brush stroke. Well, the same is true with music, and it's always in search of the right note. And in fact, I'll probably use that for a lyric. So thanks. That's true. We're always in search of the right note.
There you go. All right. We're making magic happen.
Yeah.
How did you know you had this musical talent? Like, how did you discover, like, you could write songs and compose music? Like, so when you're a little kid, how do you know that you can start doing this?
Well, I would say that a lot of composers that affected me, I mean, you're sort of drawn to people that write music that affect you. In other words, turn on the radio, there's a million different styles of different voices, different messages. And for me, I was originally introduced to music by my mom, who schooled me in Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're lucky enough to have a mom who does that, and if you're lucky enough to be affected by it, then the idea of writing melodies always made sense to me, and I was always humming melodies to myself. So I would say that always seemed to be as natural as breathing. I was an athlete as well, and so I divided my time between, basketball and soccer and so forth, and sitting down. At that time, I played the organ and got arguably reasonably good at it. And then it just started. I picked up the guitar and somehow managed to find my way around it. And each instrument spoke differently to me. And in fact, on one shining moment, that's me on the piano. We had a really good piano player, but he didn't quite play with the sort of let's get after it So I ended up pounding it out like a piano with like a chimpanzee who drank too much coffee. So that's how I came across playing the piano on that. So I think it's been a mishmash, but I never knew enough to think I couldn't do it, I guess.
And is that partly where you kind of gravitated towards folk music? That seems to be some of your earlier stuff. I guess that type of genre, the
Yeah,
folk music.
yeah, no, oh yeah, I would say, boy, you've been checking up on me. Yep, I would say the folk music, the guitar music that I write, particularly as I was starting, it's a lot, particularly when you don't have a home, or at that time I just had a little apartment, and a guitar I could always write songs on. So I did. All the while I had a keyboard, and I played when I could, and so I would start noodling with compositions and on the keyboard, and then once One Shining Moment hit, a lot of those other pieces became, I orchestrated them up, and so that part of what I do came to life, but not at the expense of the folk stuff that I do. It was just another branch of the tree.
Yeah, and so you've already mentioned it a couple of times, One Shining Moment, and I know you've told this story repeatedly, so I'm sorry to make you hash it out again. But tell us
No, I
how
don't mind.
a Pretty Waitress and Larry Bird led basically to One Shining Moment.
Sure. Well, speaking of folk guitars, I was playing a club and playing the folk guitar. And so that was an evening to remember. And but there was a waitress who worked at this folk club who was beautiful, like Helen of Troy, but so beautiful I never even talked to her for the months that I played there. So when I sat down at the end of a night's performance and was just drinking a beer and watching ESPN, Larry Bird in 1986, was in his full flower of talent. And so it was dark and everyone had left except for me and the bartender. And as it turns out, this waitress, her name is Jan Shoemaker, as a matter of fact, and she sat down right next to me, and I thought, oh boy, now what do I say? And so I knew a fair amount about basketball, so I took the time I had nothing else to say, so I tried to explain to her the poetry of basketball, particularly when you're playing like Larry Bird was at that time. Well, as it turns out, Sammy, she was a poet herself, and a fine poet, as it turns out.
Nice.
So she understood. I happened to, just sort of had nothing else to say, so I started talking about it, and it turns out she's a poet. So, but I think it was a short conversation, to say the least, because I ran out of things to say. But as she left, I jotted down on a napkin the title, One Shining Moment, as an indication of how time is uniquely slows down, particularly when you're in your full flower of your talent, like Bird or Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan or whatever. Time moves slower. And I thought, boy, there's a song inside there. So I went home and hit the hay and woke up in the morning, and a friend of mine was supposed to meet me for breakfast, but he showed up 20 minutes late. So on all the napkins around me, I wrote literally all the lyrics and stuffed all those in my pocket. And after breakfast, went home and sat down to piano, and 20, 30 minutes wrote the whole song.
Wow. It's interesting because
it's weird.
Your song One Shining Moment has been used since 1987 as part of March Madness and the tournament. And especially by the 90s, NBA on NBC had Round Ball Rock. That was the John Tesh anthem. And it's interesting how both of those two kind of like bookend that period of time where, like, as you said, there was a lot of poetry to basketball. And it was documenting all of that stuff, like the end of Larry Bird and the end of Max Johnson into Jordan. Initially, it wasn't even supposed to be used for March Madness or to celebrate the poetry of basketball. It was going to be used for the Super Bowl. Was that right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. What happened was, I mean, it's hard to explain, Sammy, but I was living in a town, Hazlitt, and I can tell from the lack of excitement on your end, you've never been to Hazlitt.
No,
But
not yet.
Hazlitt is a small farming community outside of East Lansing.
Yes.
So you have to understand that CBS wasn't knocking on my door at that moment. So when they did knock on my door, a friend of mine, Armand Katayan, took the song over to CBS without telling me. They called me up. I don't actually believe it's CBS at the time. I thought this is one of my prankster friends putting me on because I knew nothing that this was going to happen. So when this gentleman's name is Doug Toohey, and we became friends instantaneously. And he said, I know you wrote it for other reasons, but we have the Super Bowl. Would you mind if we used your song for the Super Bowl? Now, again, he's still having to convince me he's from CBS. So needless to say, if someone called you out of the blue, Sammy, and said, we want you to narrate the next Lucasfilm on Star Wars, you'd think, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
Why,
You just hang up.
It was yeah, exactly. It was like a bolt of lightning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, sure, love to. As it turns out, it didn't work out for technical reasons, and they had some technical snafus, and the commentator decided that he was going to continue talking no matter what. And so I was, of course, really disappointed because, again, this was a bolt of lightning for me and in Hazlitt, Michigan. But then Doug called me back a couple weeks later and said, well, look, you wrote it for this reason. We think it would be a great fit for the Final Four or for the March Madness. And what do you think? And, of course, I said, oh, you bet. Yeah. In short, sure you can. And that's how it found its way. And this gets back to what you were saying before about composing. The song almost sort of knew where it was headed, and it found the exact right place.
Faith, right? Like they would they would find its home and it find its place. It's faith, right? Because sometimes you said
Absolutely.
You write a song and you don't know what to do with it, but you knew you had something special.
Yes, that's exactly it, Sammy. And I always, I write lots of songs, and when you write them and you're done with them and you think, okay, we have to wait for the right moment, for the right place to put that song, and you hope and pray that the fates are with you, and whether it be kismet or providence or however you frame up the world, in this case, with One Shining Moment, it is exactly where it should be.
In your version, of course, is special. Teddy Pendergrass did a great version. Luther Vandross is also really well known.
Yep.
I want to know, how did you find Charles Barkley's rendition? That was a bit of a different take.
Well, I'm glad you asked. In fact, I was not asked about that, and in fact, Turner, who is now a partner with CBS, they just did it and then asked me what I thought. Now, I'm a big fan of Charles Barkley, and I thought it was a hoot and very funny. And I thought I couldn't have been more delighted because the song has broad enough shoulders now where having that version not only is a lot of fun, but it shows that the song now has a life of its own, and the song has a sense of humor as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating because in the last few years, say maybe 3, 5 years, especially with social media,
Mm-hmm.
one shining moment has become like a shorthand. You'll see it throughout the whole tournament. Somebody does something dumb,
Yeah.
people laughing like that needs to be a
Mm-hmm.
shining
Yeah.
moment. You know what I mean? Like, or something
Yeah.
amazing
Right.
happens, a
Yeah.
big shot, or like, oh, that's so gonna be one shining moment. Like
Yeah.
it's a shorthand now for fans, and everyone knows exactly what you're talking about.
I think it has found its way into the water table of March. I always call it Christmas in March,
Hmm.
and it is shorthand. That's a good way of putting it. That it those particularly who love basketball, but not only that, I hear it in other uses. So it's come to mean, well, exactly what Larry Bird was doing at that time, sort of the poetry of the moment. And there's another song title I gotta remember, but the poetry of the moment,
Yeah.
whether it be ill-fated or not, is important because you only get so many of them.
So sticking with this theme of then the poetry of the moment, like because you've also written
Mm-hmm.
sports theme songs for the Olympics, which were on CBS, the
Sure.
U.S. Tennis Open theme, the PGA theme. So is there a moment or a standard approach that you have when you look to do these kind of sports themes? Are you looking for like another Larry Bird type of inspiration? Are you looking for a mood? How do you approach writing these sports anthems?
The fact is, I have no formula. Someone asked me, and this get to your question, but someone asked me, well, how can it be after 34 or 5 years, one shining moment still represents and is still alive and well, and it's because it was inspired, genuinely inspired, and it wasn't just like throwing up a condominium. It was a real custom home,
Mm-hmm.
And for example, the PGA theme. Well, the reality is, I wrote that, or there actually did the PGA Championship theme and the PGA theme, but the PGA theme was a song called "Young Sarah" that I was on the road at the time, and a friend of mine had his daughter, Jeff Henning's daughter, Sarah Henning, and she was just born, and I don't know where I was, but I just went into a private space with my guitar and wrote it. Now, when CBS came calling, this is many years later, saying, do you have anything we could use for the PGA theme? I said, well, here's a guitar instrumental, and they loved it. Now, I think they loved it because it was inspired by my friend's phone call, and so the song felt that way. It felt inspired. So, and the other ones, in fact, that was the U.S. Tennis Open theme, was a piece that I had written when I was in college, and I stuck it in a shoebox, and it's called Devotion, and it just was lingering there for 10 years later. I thought, this might really work, and then orchestrated it up, and turns out it did. So I think the good fortune that way is that if you in this case, I found pieces that were born for their own reasons, not necessarily because CBS called, and thank goodness they did. And so then it was a pretty good fit. And I will say that CBS really has done a wonderful job, at least particularly at that time, of really caring about the music they put on the air.
Yeah. And speaking of doing a good job, like we've seen how many March Madness superstars who have shining moments during the tournament, they go on to have a big career in the
Yeah.
NBA. And
Mm-hmm.
for you,
Mm-hmm.
looking back, was this the career that you envisioned? Like, like you said, you're sitting in this bar, right? And you're trying to talk to this
Right.
waitress. You're doing folk songs. Like, was this how you envisioned your career kind of going, or was this just the way that it all worked out?
I would say the latter. Um, I never really thought about how would I put this. Some people want a career. This turned out to be a career. I wanted to write music and create music I'm really proud of, which I am. And so I would say I was just busy writing music each and every day. I do these gigs or these concerts, and then go home and write very different music than I was doing in my evening's work or back to my folk days. So I never thought I'm going to go to Hollywood and be a star. It never
Mm.
even occurred to me. And I don't know how many people listen to your podcast, but suffice to say, I used to tour around doing concerts for colleges for a while, and I just enjoyed. No matter where I played, I enjoyed whether it be 500 people or 200 people or 100 people or 7 people. I always enjoyed picking up my guitar and playing, or sitting down on the piano and playing. And then I got picked up and toured around with Art Garfunkel for a while. And that was a real confirmation of what I had learned in all those other less, I won't say attractive, but less famous places.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a confirmation of all the things I'd learned. So, and also, if I would add, that good things happened when I quit trying to please everyone. I got to a point in my life where, particularly when you're a songwriter, you try to ape what's on the radio or whatever. You're just trying to get someone to notice you. And it was almost, Sammy, when I quit worrying about who was noticing me and just worried about doing the work and doing the writing, the good things started to happen. And many of these pieces that you're talking about were songs I wrote after my workday was done. I did it for my own reasons, but I lacked the confidence in trusting them, and then I had to decide, no, I'm going to do what I do and see what happens. And then this all happened.
Faith again that it would
and I
work
guess
out.
we call it a career now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And we got to wrap up, obviously, talking about the current tournament. Unfortunately, I'm talking to you just after Michigan was just eliminated. I was surprised they actually
Yep.
lost to UCLA. I thought they could have rumbled a little bit more, but I guess
Yep.
that's it. So, how are you enjoying this year's tournament?
Well, I think it's. I happen to know the woman who runs it for the NCAA, and she's lovely, and she says it's a little surreal down there in Indianapolis because there's not all the festivities that generally go along with it. But in this COVID world we live in, I'm just really proud of the NCAA of making it work, having all these athletes join together in a way that could have come off the rails in a heartbeat. And the quality, look, there's some really great teams and some great players. And while it's not the usual, I think we all learned that we're not going to get the usual for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So it still remains a celebration of the moment. It still remains 19, 20-year-old young men playing their hearts out. The game is exciting as ever. I broke my heart for U of M, but I used to play a little bit. Sometimes the ball doesn't go in the hole, and that boils down to that. So, that's the rough justice of it. But I'm a big fan of Coach Howard, so he brought those kids. They picked Michigan to end up 6th in the Big Ten, so they really made themselves proud. And again, just some days they seem a little jet lagged to me, and I don't, just sometimes that happens. So back to your question, I think I remember the UNLV days in the 90s, and I think Gonzaga is about as good as you're going to see. So we'll see how the rest of the tournament plays out, but I sure would hate to play them because they're really good.
I know. I thought the last round, the last game they had, I thought that was going to do them in, and I was wrong again. So I think they've proven a lot of people like myself wrong consistently, but it seems to fuel them, much like Larry Bird, right? The doubters and the haters are fuel.
Yeah. Yep. And as I say to my wife, you have 19, 20-year-old young men, and any given day, you don't know what'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the excitement of the thing, because look, great teams get beaten, and for reasons that defy logic. But that's the beauty of it. It ain't logic. It's the moment, and these kids are in the moment uniquely, and when they see themselves in the vignette, the One Shining Moment vignette, they'll have a painting of themselves at age 19, 20 in the full flower of their talent and youth. And most of these kids won't play in the pros. That's a fact. So, this is their moment, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
That's a great way to end it there. I mean, we started talking about C.S. Lewis and faith at the top of this conversation, and now we're kind of going full circle and talking about hope, right? Which is what the whole tournament represents and what your song represents, right? That you can have this one shining moment, this one big shot, this one moment where then your team goes on to the next round, and it's super exciting. And we've seen Cinderella teams do that. So we started with faith, and we'll end on hope, which I think is a good way to end it.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect, Sammy. Hey, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and don't be a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be more than glad to talk to you any old time.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
About the scores.
Mm-hmm. Yo, that was songwriter and composer David Barrett, the writer of One Shining Moment. Shout out to Larry Bird for that inspiration. That dude was amazing. I am Sammy Younan, and this is my Summer Lair. Now, because One Shining Moment likes to look back, this episode's social media question is simple. What is your favorite March Madness moment? Was there a special shot? Or do you have a specific team or even a player you absolutely adore? Perhaps young Grant Hill? Or what about the Fab Five? There's so many moments and players and shots and teams to choose. Reach out to me via social media. I have many shining and sarcastic moments at My Pal Sammy. That's My Pal Sammy for IG, Facebook, and Twitter. But you could also follow me at My Summer Lair for extra pop culture goodness. Please, I am asking you, follow me now rather than join the bandwagon later on when I'm all popular. You can say you were a day one fan. You were there at the beginning. Thank you so much for listening to me in the Netflix world. March Madness, yo.